Hello, everybody who's coming in. We'll be going pretty soon, but welcome. If you are zooming in from outside the metro area, feel free to put in the chat where you are. We're always curious about where people are across the country. You can say that you're from here too, if you'd like. But welcome, everybody. Oh, Seattle, San Francisco, awesome. Wyoming, wow, got a lot of West Coasters. And hello, Virginia. We have a lot of people coming to this. We anticipate a good crowd. So we're going to be letting people in over the next few minutes, but we are going to start right on time. And people will probably continue to come through the doors for a few minutes.
Okay, I think it's time to get started. It's just past 7 o'clock.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Many of you are new to us. Many of you have been with us many times before. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Herrick. I founded 31st Street Swing Left way back in 2017. We are in our 10th year, and we are really excited to be here tonight. Our objective tonight is to help you have better conversations with others about politics, with a focus on the Virginia redistricting vote on April 21st. Whether you plan to canvass, phone bank, or perhaps more importantly, talk to your friends, family, and neighbors, you'll get some great tools and tips tonight. If you're in the DC area, a number of 31st Street members are planning to practice these skills this coming Saturday, April 11th at noon in Arlington, Virginia. Anybody is welcome to join that. You don't have to be part of 31st Street. We welcome anybody who wants to go canvass. It's nearby, it's blue, it's very walkable, and we're really excited to let you know that Eric Holder will be speaking at the noon launch. We will drop the mobilized link in the chat. That is where you can click to sign up for that canvas. And we'll hope that you'll join us just to get the word out about this redistricting amendment. It is my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Chur, who is using her keen intellect, empathy, and capacity for listening to strengthen our democracy, one conversation at a time. Her book, The Joy of Talking Politics with Strangers, is a labor of love based on years of experience phone banking, canvassing, and ballot curing with thousands of voters in California's Central Valley and beyond. Elizabeth has trained more than 4,000 volunteers nationally through workshops focused on phone banking and canvassing for introverts and their friends, engaging people who say they don't vote, and using Spanish to connect with Spanish-speaking voters. We thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your efforts and for being here tonight. A warm welcome to you and a warm welcome to everybody else who is attending.
Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. And I am thrilled to be here with all of you today. As we're getting settled, we are dropping a link into the chat for the handout that we emailed you before. But if you haven't yet had a chance to download that and print that out, now would be a great time to do that. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here today. We're so glad you're here. And before we get started, we'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge how much is going on in our country right now and the world. The war in the Middle East, mass incarceration of immigrants, the government's killing of innocent civilians, the Epstein files, and so much more. I invite you to just take a moment to acknowledge all of that and to reconnect with why the work that all of you are doing is so very important. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today and for channeling your energy into doing something to address these huge challenges. So just a few quick housekeeping items. Because this is a large group, we ask you to please keep yourself muted most of the time. We will give you a chance to talk in smaller groups later in this workshop, and there will be time for questions at the end. And again, if you haven't yet had a chance to print out the handout, now would be a great time to do that. We're dropping a link in the chat, and we recommend that you download it as a PDF rather than opening it in Google Docs, if that's possible. And if you have any trouble accessing the file, you can also email our co-host or chat our co-host, Mary Pence, and she can send it to you. She'll put her email in the chat. If you don't have a printer, it would be helpful to at least have the file open on your computer so you can have it available. All right, so just a quick overview of today. I will discuss why talking with voters in person or by phone is so important and so effective. I'll share some tips for engaging Virginia voters about the special election on redistricting, including how to elicit any concerns they might have and to help them resolve these. And then we'll demonstrate a few interactions, give all of you a chance to practice, and wrap up. Afterwards, we hope some of you can stick around for an optional question and answer period. Since I don't know most of you, I'd like to just get a sense of who's in the room today. I wonder if you could raise your physical or virtual hand if you've ever written postcards or letters to voters. Great. All right. Thank you. You can put your hands down. And now if you could raise your hand if you've ever phone banked or canvassed, could you raise? All right. Wow. Okay. Fantastic. You can put your hands down. And then just finally, what if any folks who have not yet done much phone banking or canvassing, but you might be willing to give it a try? If you could raise your hand for that, that would be great. Fabulous. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So no matter what your level of experience, I hope that you will get something out of this training. So as you know, talking with voters in person or on the phone are the most effective ways to boost turnout. And since many of you, I believe, live in or near Virginia, you have an incredible opportunity to talk with your neighbors, your friends, and others about the upcoming special election on redistricting. And no matter where you're based, you can always phone bank. So today I'm going to offer some easy ways to talk with people about the special election and to encourage them to vote yes. This material is based on our experience here in California last fall with Proposition 50, which was very similar to the proposed constitutional amendment before Virginia voters right now. So I'd love to start by sharing some pictures with you. As you know, so many elections are won by just a handful of votes. In 2024, I volunteered for the campaign of Democratic congressional candidate Adam Gray. I'm here with him in this photo, and he won his election by just 187 votes in California's Central Valley. And when I was in DC last summer, it was such a thrill to visit Congressman Adam Gray's office and to get to meet with his former campaign manager, who's now his chief of staff, Ben Rodriguez. In that election, every vote really did count. Last summer, I had the chance to attend Network Nova's Women's Summit in Northern Virginia, where I met Steve Anders and Michelle Hainbach, who came to a workshop I taught there, and that's how I got connected with 31st Street Swing Left. Here I am signing a copy of my book for Michelle. And at that conference, I also had a chance to meet Shelley Simons. You may remember that back in 2017, she was the Democratic candidate for the Virginia House of Delegates who was tied with her Republican opponent after a recount. The State Board of Elections put their names into a bowl to decide the result. And not only did the Republican win that lottery, but that chance result meant that Republicans maintained majority control of the House of Delegates, all because the Democrats fell short by one vote. 2 years later, she ran again and she won. And at the Women's Summit last year, Delegate Simons told me that every year at least one person comes up to her with this guilty look on their face and tells her, "It was me. I didn't vote in 2017, and that's why you didn't win that year." So if anyone ever tells you that one vote doesn't make a difference, you can share the story of Delegate Simons with them and ask what they think of that. Last fall, I had the joy of getting to canvass in my hometown of San Francisco for Proposition 50. There was no need to drive to a swing district to get out the vote. Every voter in the state decided the fate of this effort to push back against Trump's power grab. It was amazing. Unlike some places I've canvassed, almost every house had registered Democrats in it. I spent 2 hours just going up and down one densely populated block. People were friendly and thanked me for what I was doing. And almost everyone who had heard about it was in favor of Proposition 50. But it was still useful for me to be there because some people needed more information. Here I am with one of those voters, Chris. He didn't know anything about it, but once I explained why I was there and what Proposition 50 would do, he was all in. He said he'd vote for it, and when I asked him if he could ask 3 friends to also vote yes on Prop 50, he said, "Yes, I'll tell all my friends, and I'll take a picture of this flyer and post it on social media." He talked about how worried he was about the direction of the country and how we need to hold Trump accountable and stand up for our rights. When I said how inspiring it was to hear him talk and how he totally made my day by talking with me, he said, "No, you made my day by being here and doing what you're doing. Thank you." These are the kinds of uplifting conversations I get to have when talking with people in the community. So I'm actually relatively new to this work, and in many ways, I'm a reluctant activist. Before 2016, I voted in every election and I phone banked every 4 years. But mostly, I took democracy for granted, and I assumed that other people would be knocking on doors and making calls. And I'm not sure who I thought these other people were, like elves or idealistic college students, but I figured that they would take care of it. So when Trump was elected, I realized I needed to do more. I was too scared to canvass at first, so I got my start in phone banking. And eventually I mustered the courage to canvass in California's Central Valley and in Virginia's Chesterfield County, and I actually fell in love with this work. Let me tell you about one of the voters I've met in a swing district in California's Central Valley. I'll call him Arun. He actually wasn't on my official contact list, but I saw him playing catch with his 3 kids in the street, and I called it, "Hi, are you eligible to vote by any chance?" And when he said yes, I introduced myself and I explained that I was talking with people in the neighborhood about the upcoming election. He listened and then he said, "I wasn't quite sure how the ballot worked." I asked if he'd already received it in the mail, and he said yes. And I said, "Well, why don't you go get it and I'll show you. It's pretty easy once you know how it works." So he went in his house, he came back with his ballot. He turned on the light in his garage and we spread out the pages of the ballot on the trunk of his car. His 3 kids all gathered around, their eyes really big. I got a piece of scratch paper and I drew a mock-up of a sample race between candidate A and candidate B. I told him, "See, you just fill in the middle of this arrow next to candidate A or candidate B's name, whichever you want to vote for." And I demonstrated on the scratch paper. I also showed him how to sign and date the vote by mail ballot envelope, and I explained how to return it in time for it to be counted. I told him why I was supporting the Democratic congressional candidate. Arun seemed to resonate with his priorities, and he mentioned he wasn't a big fan of Trump. And towards the end of the conversation, he said with a trace of embarrassment, "I haven't voted since I became a citizen 12 years ago, but I was thinking I might vote this year." I said, "This would be a great time to start voting. Do you think you could fill out your ballot this weekend and get it in the mail on Monday?" He said yes. And then I turned to his 3 kids and said, "It's great that you got to see how voting works. In a few years, all of you will be old enough to vote too." Arun wasn't on my voter contact list, maybe because he'd never voted before, but because I was knocking doors in person, I was able to talk with him when he probably wasn't on any official lists. I got to spend 15 minutes helping Arun get one step closer to casting his first ever ballot. And I also got to show 3 future voters how elections work. In that congressional election, the Democratic candidate flipped the seat from red to blue with just 862 votes, perhaps with the help of Arun's very first ballot. That's the power of canvassing in person, when you get to talk with voters, connect with people who may not be reachable any other way, and help them overcome obstacles to voting. So for those of you who may be newer to knocking doors or making calls, let me give you a sneak preview of how a conversation might unfold and some tips for making the most of each encounter. I try to bring an overall vibe that's friendly and respectful rather than being a pushy salesperson. I strive to bring non-judgmental curiosity to our interchange. I'm here to learn about their concerns and to offer useful information that is tailored to their specific priorities, rather than talking at them or just slinging a lot of facts in their direction. So I like to start out by introducing myself, saying something like, "Hi, my name is Elizabeth Chur, and I'm a volunteer with 31st Street Swing Left. I'm talking with people in the neighborhood about the special election that's happening from now until April 21st. I'm curious, what, if anything, have you heard about Virginia's special election on redistricting? Then I pause for a moment, and if I get a blank look, I might say it's a proposal to push back against Trump's power grab and temporarily redraw our congressional districts. And then I pause and listen for their response. If they're very familiar with the proposed amendment, I ask how likely they are to support it. If they're very supportive, I thank them and ask if they would make sure that three friends also get out to vote yes for the measure. If they're really enthusiastic, I can invite them to help out for a few hours doing what I'm doing. I can share ways for them to plug in or get their contact information and forward a link with volunteer opportunities. If they haven't heard anything about the special election, and yes, there are still some voters in that boat right now, I might explain it like this. Right now, Trump is acting like a king rather than a president, but he's worried he might lose power if Democrats regain control of the House of Representatives this fall. And if the Democrats had more power, they would act like the emergency brake on an out of control car. He's too scared to let the people decide. So he pressured the Texas governor to change the rules to make it easier for Republicans to get elected in Texas this fall. That way, Republicans have a better chance of maintaining control of the House of Representatives, and Trump can keep doing whatever he wants. But Virginia wants to fight back. Our governor and state legislators are asking voters for permission to update our congressional maps for the next 5 years. That would make it easier to elect Democrats to the House of Representatives and balance out what Texas and other Republican states are doing. President Obama and Governor Spanberger strongly support this measure. This is our best chance to take power away from Trump and to rein him in. What are your thoughts about that? If they have hesitations, I listen respectfully and I try to address their concerns. So, for example, if they say, I don't like gerrymandering, no matter who does it, two wrongs don't make a right, I could say, I hear you. When I first heard about this special election, I wasn't that excited about it. But after talking with people I respect, I realized that this legislation is like self-defense for democracy. It only takes effect if another state like Texas goes forward with gerrymandering. Also, this would just be temporary. Virginia's districts would only be redrawn for 5 years until the 2030 census. Texas's governor and state legislature made these changes themselves, whereas Virginia is asking voters for permission to move forward. Another approach you might try, especially if they say something like, they're busy watching basketball, you could say, well, what if your team made it to the NBA playoffs and both teams started with 5 players on the court, but after halftime, the other team brought out 10 players onto the court? Would you just keep playing with 5 players, or would you think it was fair to bring out 10 of your own players and see what they have to say about that? Some other folks might say, well, didn't Virginia vote in favor of our independent redistricting commission just a few years ago? And I could say, you're right, we did vote on that. But I think voters have the right to change their mind when the external circumstances change. That was a different time in politics before Trump tried to rig the system. He's the one who started this when he called up the governor of Texas and told him to find 5 more congressional seats, like he asked Georgia to find him 11,000 plus more votes in 2020. Taking back the House of Representatives next year is our best chance at putting the emergency brakes on this out of control car. I'm wondering, what do you think about that? And then listen to what they have to say. Some people might say, well, so what? We have to destroy democracy to save it? I might say, I hear your concerns about that. Personally, I think Trump is already destroying democracy with his total disregard for the law. And unfortunately, the Republicans aren't standing up to him. So Virginia is doing its best to push back. Right now, the Republicans do whatever Trump wants. But imagine if we took back the House majority and could stop rubber stamping Trump's agenda and start holding him accountable. What do you think about that? Another approach you might try, especially if the voter is a woman or you think they might be receptive to this approach, you could say, this constitutional amendment is like a speed bump to slow Trump down from doing dangerous, illegal things. I had a friend who got a restraining order against her abusive partner. That didn't stop all the abuse, but it put up one protective barrier while she worked on other ways to keep herself safe. What do you think about that? And then listen to what they have to say. So these are just a few sample hesitations. The most important things to remember are to slow down and to listen with empathy and respect. And remember, this is not a debate or an arm wrestling match. You want to acknowledge the voters' concerns, share your thoughts, and ask what they think about what you've shared with them. So, if you are not getting traction, I suggest zooming out to the big picture. I'd like to share three magic phrases that help me engage in meaningful conversations. The first magic phrase is, if you could change two or three things about the country, what would they be? If they can't think of anything, I might ask it another way. Well, what keeps you up at night? Or even, if you were in an elevator with the president for 2 minutes, what would you tell him? This helps me find out what's most important to them. The second magic phrase is, wow, that sounds really fill in the blank. Just listen to what you heard and try to reflect what it is. That sounds really hard. That sounds really sad. Wow, that sounds really scary. Sometimes people share some really big things like losing their job and the big Doge layoffs or dealing with a sick family member. Saying that sounds really hard helps to demonstrate genuine empathy and can bring that conversation down from the head to the heart. I try to take a moment to acknowledge the emotional weight of what someone shares with me. That helps move the conversation from transactional to relational and encourages them to keep talking. It can be really transformative to shift this conversation from like a sales pitch into a genuine connection with another human being. The third magic phrase is, interesting. Tell me more about that. Even if I totally disagree, I try to bring my curiosity to the conversation. Can I view the voter like an anthropologist would? Rather than jumping into my opinions or ideas, I can use friendly, non judgmental curiosity to learn more about their priorities and what makes them tick. The beauty of these phrases is that they're nonpartisan and they work in almost any situation with any voter. And after I say any one of these, I count to 10 in my head. Many times people feel like they have to fill that silence. And if you wait for them to say something, they'll often start talking. These phrases can also help me find out more about what's most important to a voter and how it impacts them or their family. And if I hear any points of alignment a little later in the conversation, I try to connect their concerns back to what's at stake in the election and how supporting this redistricting amendment could help them address their big picture concerns. So, towards the end of the conversation, to get a sense of where they're at, I can ask them, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to vote yes on the redistricting amendment, with 0 being very unlikely and 10 being very likely? And for example, if they say I'm a 2, you could say, oh, interesting. I'm curious why that isn't a 0 or a 1. And that could give you some insight into what might motivate them to vote for it. And then I could ask them, I'm curious, what might boost your 2 to a 3 or a 4? And you can listen to them and maybe you can respond if there's something that might help them increase their motivation to vote yes. If they need more information or they want to talk with somebody else about this, whatever it is, you might find out some interesting intel. So finally, as you're wrapping up the conversation, if they support the redistricting amendment, you can say, thank you so much for your support. Would you be able to tell 3 people about the upcoming election and encourage them to vote yes on the amendment as well? That's called vote tripling. It's really important. If they're undecided, you could say, could I give you a little more information about the special election and then offer that to them? And finally, if they don't support it, you could ask, well, what, if anything, might make you reconsider? And you might find out some interesting information. So no matter what their level of support, please thank them for their time and wish them a good day. So now to help demonstrate this, I'm wondering if someone from the audience who has a copy of the handout in front of them would be willing to willing to volunteer to role play with me. I can be the canvasser and you can be the voter. So if you could just use the raise hand feature to help us find you in this big group, that would be wonderful. Oh, great. John, thank you so much. And do you happen to have a copy of the handout?
Good.
Sorry, old machine. It's slow to unmute.
I hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I have.
Okay, wonderful. So, Great. Yeah. And if you could maybe portray a voter that's maybe a little bit skeptical or has some reservations, that'll give me a chance to demonstrate how this might work in practice.
This
So,
is me looking like a skeptical voter, yes.
okay. Channel that skepticism. All right. I'm going to knock on your door. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, may I speak with John, please?
Uh, who is this?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Chur, and I'm a volunteer with 31st Street Swing Left. I'm talking with people in the neighborhood today about the special election that's happening from now till April 21st. And I'm curious, what, if anything, have you heard about the special election?
Uh, is that coming up? I think I heard something about it, but no, I
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, actually, early voting has already started, and you have until April 21st to cast your ballot. And it's about a proposed constitutional amendment for the state of Virginia. And it is meant to address the fact that Trump is really acting like a king right now rather than a president. But he's really scared that he might lose power if the Democrats regain control of the House of Representatives this fall in the midterm. So he's too scared to let the people decide the outcome of these races. So he actually pressured the Texas governor last year to change the rules to make it easier for them in Texas to elect Republicans. And that way, Republicans are going to have a better chance of maintaining control of the House of Representatives, and he can do whatever he wants. But Virginia is actually standing up and fighting back. And our governor, Abigail Spanberger, and our state legislators are asking voters in Virginia for permission to temporarily change the congressional maps for the just for the next 5 years, and that would make it easier to elect Democrats to the House of Representatives and balance out what Texas is doing. This is our best chance to rein in Trump and take power away from him. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about that.
Um, out of character. Um, this is easy for me because I had the same questions about Prop 50. Okay, back in character. I didn't we just vote on a redistricting system just a year or so ago?
Yeah, yeah, there was recently the people of Virginia did vote in support of an independent redistricting commission. Um, and I have to say that was, I believe, in 2020, and that was a different era in politics. It was before January 6th. It was before a lot of things happened in our country. And in my opinion, I think that the voters have the right to change their mind if the circumstances change. It's a little bit, like, yesterday was sunny. And so, I left the house without an umbrella, but today it's raining. So I brought my umbrella with me because, the environment is different. And so I'm making different choices around that. And I think that the people of Virginia also deserve to change their minds if they see things going on in the environment that really sort of change the big picture. I'm curious what you think about that.
I'm not sure I agree. One of the features of the law is that
Mhm.
it doesn't change and that you do have consistency, and that's important to keep.
Mhm.
Um,
Tell me more about that.
um, if your systems, and I don't know, I'm not a political expert, but if you're,
That's okay.
or legal expert, but if your systems and your institutions change with the weather, then
Mhm.
they're not going to be very reliable.
I
Um,
understand. Yeah, so you think that being consistent and kind of staying the course is really important for the stability of our democracy.
yeah,
Hmm.
and I'm also worried that people in the, I'm sorry, I'm getting out of character there. Okay. Yeah, yes, I do. I do think I mean, that's
Hmm.
institutions are institutions should be institutions.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I would say most of the time I don't love the chaos that
Hmm.
happens when we kind of keep turning and changing our minds. However, my experience of what's going on in our country right now is unprecedented.
Hmm.
We have never seen the kinds of things that are happening right now in our country happening. We've never had a president try to deny the election results. and then claim for years after that it is something other than it was. We've never had a president leaning on state officials to find him ballots or to find him more congressional seats. This is unprecedented. It would be like, if we were, in the World Series or something, and all of a sudden the other team wants to completely change the rules to make it easier for them. That's not how the game is played. So, I agree with you in general. I tend to be kind of a slow moving person. I don't like just responding to everything that comes along. But the stakes are huge for this. And I really am very concerned that if we don't push back with every tool at our disposal, we've seen how much Trump is willing to do that is not constitutional, completely illegal. And there's really nothing to stop him. And I think that winning in the midterms and trying to rein in some of the worst abuses of power is critical to the future of our democracy. And I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I certainly agree with you that it's unprecedented, and I would very much prefer to be living in precedented. I want to be precedented as all get out.
Yes. John, thank you. I'm going to
okay.
pause you right there just because we won't be able to finish this conversation, but this is such a great
I will comment that
yes,
I'm
please.
being someone who's not trying to get back to his, food cooking on the stove or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully that gives all of us in the room just sort of an idea, a little flavor of, how these conversations might go, and that you can listen to folks, validate their concerns, and then also maybe offer your perspective and engage. If this were real life, we would continue on for quite a while. But
I will say that unprecedented argument convinced me. So.
Okay. All right. Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you stepping up and participating. And I'm just wondering now if we could ask for 2 other volunteers who also have a copy of the handout. Again, this time one of you can play the canvasser and one can be the voter, and then I can stand on the sidelines and then whisper any suggestions in your ear. We're having a request for a short version. Yes. So we could try that. Do we have any volunteers who might be willing to illustrate this? Lynn. All right. And Mary. Fabulous. Okay. Which of you would like to be the canvasser?
Whatever you prefer, Mary.
I guess I could be the canvasser. I don't mind.
Okay, great. So maybe because people were curious to have maybe a slightly shorter conversation, maybe Lynn, you could be maybe a little less skeptical, but maybe you haven't heard too much about it and still need to get some encouragement to vote. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Knock, knock, knock.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Mary Detweiler. I'm a volunteer with the 31st Street Left, and I'm here to talk about the important election we have coming up in Virginia on redistricting. Have you been hearing some things about that? And
I've gotten some mailings, but I haven't paid much attention. Can you remind me what it is?
Sure. Well, it's an important election in Virginia to give the voters an opportunity to vote on a redistricting of our congressional seats. What it is actually is to work against what Trump is trying to do in other states to rig the elections so that he will have a better chance of keeping control in Congress by not allowing a fair election throughout the country. But what he's started doing back last summer was to request or demand that Texas redraw their congressional lines such that he would get more Republican seats. He feels he's owed more Republican seats, and therefore Texas obliged him and other states have been doing the same thing. Virginia is fighting back, and so we are allowing our proposal allows the voters to decide whether we will allow redistricting such that we will have a fair election across the country and even the playing field. So what do you think about what I just said? Does that make sense to you, or do you have
Well,
questions about it?
yes, now I remember that what those postcards were about. You, I do remember voting a few years ago to have these commissions like that did redistricting, and then this is not that, right? This is different from that.
Well, that is true. We did in Virginia go through a very extensive process to establish by an amendment for a bipartisan commission to draw the lines in Virginia. And we voted for that significantly, and we were happy with that. But the whole environment now has changed. And our president is gone into very uncharted territory now with doing all kinds of things that are highly illegal, and there really is no brake on this out of control car. And if he were to retain control in Congress after these midterms in November, the Republicans are not in Congress are not standing up to him. They're allowing him to do whatever he wants. And there really is no break there. So Virginia would be a break against that. So we are putting together a commission, an amendment to allow a temporary pausing of that earlier commission. This time we write the draw the line such that we can fight back, but it's temporary. And after the 2030 census, we then go back to exactly what we voted on back in 2020, exactly what you remembered. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no,
to do
it does.
together?
That actually it does make a lot of sense. I mean, I'm torn because I really feel like, we want to have fair districting. I mean, I believe in that. And also I can't stand what he's doing. Like it is just I cannot even get into it. But so I guess I can see why, voting yes it makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You feel that gerrymandering is not a good thing. We should be fair about how we draw districts. But on the other hand, we can't allow our president to rig the elections and continue unchecked.
Absolutely.
So we have to have a solution, at least a temporary one to fight back.
Yeah.
So
Well,
do you
thank
think
you.
you're likely to then support this amendment? And
I
how
think
likely, or on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about it?
oh, 1 to
0 being
10.
against it and
Oh,
10 being for it.
probably like a 7.
Ah, very
I
good.
think I'm glad you reminded me that it exists. So that's,
Yeah,
I forgot.
yeah. Well, what do you, if you'd like to help, one thing that is very helpful is for you to let other friends, 3 or 4 friends and neighbors and family, no matter where they live in Virginia, all votes are equally important across the state.
Hmm.
If you can remind them how important this is and tell them why you are voting for the amendment, that would be a very powerful statement from you. They trust you.
No, I can definitely at least get my sister, my mother, and there's at least one friend of mine who tends not to vote for things, so I could probably do that.
Wonderful. And do you think you'd like to help us to win this election? Postcard writing, making some phone calls, knocking on
I
doors.
probably don't want to do that.
I understand, and you're doing what you're contacting your friends and neighbors and family is one of the
Yeah,
most important things you can do, and voting as well. So I
yeah, but
guess
thank you.
thank you so much.
Good job, Mary. You convinced me.
Wow, thank you so much, both of you. Mary, you are a pro.
Yeah.
Well, I used things that I had just picked up a minute ago.
Well,
Things that
you just
Elizabeth that you said that really those are very powerful things that we've
you
just
wove this
learned.
in so
So thank you.
seamlessly. That was just beautiful. And thank you, Lynn, for I think there's a lot of voters like the character that you portrayed that, they're busy with other things, but they would be willing to support this if someone friendly person comes, knocks on the door and engages with them for a few minutes. So thank you so much, both of you. really appreciate you helping us learn together. So anyway, the best way to get better at navigating these conversations is to practice. So now we'd like to give all of you a chance to try this out. And in a moment, we'll send you off in small groups of 2 to 3 people to give you a chance to practice for about 20 minutes. Now, I know some of you may not love role playing, or you might get nervous even thinking about talking politics with strangers. I saw something in the chat about maybe preferring to like leave some printed material for people to read, but I really hear what you're saying. And I still get nervous talking with voters, but I would encourage you to stay with us because in past survey feedback, many people say this next part is the most valuable part of the training where they get to build their skills. It's like learning to swim. You can watch a lot of YouTube videos, but eventually you do need to get in the water. And it's really great to practice in a friendly, supportive environment so you'll feel more prepared to talk with real voters. And I will just say also that talking with voters rather than a one-way kind of communication like postcards or letters allows you to have the kind of dialogue and to respond to people's questions and concerns in a way that can help people really reevaluate if they're undecided or they're not going to vote, that you could really help move the needle on that. So I really encourage you to practice and to bring this out in the world. So in your small groups, please do remember to unmute yourselves when you arrive, and then please take turns in the roles of volunteer, voter, and observer. And please debrief and switch roles every 6 minutes. We will send a little reminder, but if you set a timer, that could be helpful as well. Use the handout script to help you get started in these conversations. And as the voter, like you saw in these demos, you initially expressed some hesitancy about the constitutional amendment. You can pick one or more of the doubts that's listed on your handout, like we did in these demos. And then as the volunteer, the canvasser or the phone banker, your main goal is to establish a friendly, respectful connection with the voter, briefly explain what this election is about, and help them address any hesitations they might have. And if you get stuck or you need help with engaging a voter in the conversation, you can try using one of these 3 magic phrases that I shared with you and that are on your handout. If you still need a copy of that handout, we're dropping a link in the chat once again. And if you don't have a printer, it'd be helpful if you can just open the file on your computer. And if for some reason you can't open the handout, don't worry. Just practice these conversations based on the demos you just saw. It's kind of like real life and talking with real voters. There's always an element of improv. We will have a little time to debrief when we all come back. And if you end up by yourself in a breakout room for more than just a minute, or if you have any technical issues, just come back to this main room and we will help you out. So Graham, are we ready to go into breakout rooms, or you need just one more minute?
Opening up the rooms.
Okay, fabulous. So we'll see you all back here in just a few minutes. Oh, also, I see some people like they can't talk. There is value in just being an observer. So I would encourage you to stay on the call. And if you just want to observe the calls, that's great. All right. Great. Well, welcome back, everybody. I got to hear some wonderful conversations, and I hope that you also got some good experience from getting to practice with some of the other participants here. Really wonderful job. This is making me feel really hopeful. So I'd like to just invite you to have a little debrief of that experience. And I'm wondering if you could put in the chat something that went well or one thing you learned from practicing. Why don't you share that with us in the chat? Yeah, the postcards with some erroneous info, having a cheat sheet, feeling more confident. Yes, it's good. It's a good starting thing, which, as you do it more, it kind of gets into your memory and you'll have the facts sort of at your ready disposal. Helpful to find ways to respond to a negative person, easier to talk about than you anticipated. What they would like to change about the country as a way to connect with the voter. Yes. Yes. Great. Yeah. guardrails in place instead of gerrymandering. Yeah, that's a nice way to frame it. A measured way to talk about propaganda. Yeah, practice makes perfect, or practice makes progress in my experience. There's always room to improve for all of us, so it's great to be practicing here. Wonderful, great. Um, and I see that there's some questions. We can save time for that after we wrap up the formal part of the training. So now I'd like to just invite you to put in the chat if there was anything challenging in those conversations or that practice, or any places you got stuck. Love to hear about that as well. Anything challenging or places that you felt kind of stuck. People didn't know they voted for the constitutional amendment to redraw the congressional lines. Oh, people raising the vote no ads with Obama. Yeah, not necessarily knowing all the details, especially if you don't live in Virginia, how to counter the Texas versus Virginia conversation. The voters said that the whole system is bad. We should throw everyone out and start over. Yes. Always challenging to bring out voters who don't do politics. I actually have a whole training on how to respond to people who say I don't vote, and we can talk about that during the Q&A as well. Has Texas definitely triggered the gerrymandering? Yes, sadly they have. Don't know enough about the prior redistricting effort. Great. All right. Yeah, it looks like some sort of specific fact things that we maybe can discuss afterwards. The temporary 5 years might seem like a long time for something that's temporary. Okay. Yeah, we can talk about some of these specific questions afterwards. All right. Well, thank you so much for participating and staying for the breakouts. Really appreciate the effort that you put into that. And like I mentioned, we will have a Q&A after we wrap up the formal part of the training. But first of all, just a few housekeeping items. We would love your feedback on today's workshop. So we're going to be dropping a link into the chat for a 2-minute anonymous survey. We do read every single comment, and your feedback helps us to improve. For more resources and information about my book, The Joy of Talking Politics with Strangers, you can visit my website, elizabethchur.com. And you can find videos for my other trainings, like the one I mentioned about people who say I don't vote. And also, if you want to find out about my upcoming workshops and talks, you can join my Substack mailing list. I will be doing more trainings later this year. I also want to give a huge round of applause to the wonderful team who made today's workshop possible, including Lisa Herrick, Graham Huey, Michelle Hainbach, Mary Pence, Lisa Fletcher, Jim Coates, and everyone at 31st Street Swing Left. And I want to give a special shout out to Steve Anders, who spent many, many hours coordinating everything behind the scenes, making sure all of you got the handout in advance. So thank you so much, Steve, and the entire 31st Street team. Yay! So remember, the best way to get better at having conversations with voters is to practice. And in a minute, we'll share some opportunities for you to put your new skills to use. I would love to know if you are willing to commit to canvassing or phone banking at least once before the special election. Could you please raise your virtual or physical hand? Yeah. Woo! Yeah, look at all those hands. Yes. Yes, yes. Thank you. This is super exciting. Like, as you know, the special election is going to be really close. There was a poll in the last couple of days in the Washington Post that really showed that these were neck and neck. And so it's going to come down to turnout. Every vote counts. And if you live in or near Virginia, the most effective thing you can do is to canvass. And if you live out of state, or you only have like an hour, you can always phone bank any day of the week, and that frees up people who are based in Virginia to get out and knock on doors. So we really need every volunteer. We will put links in the chat for upcoming canvassing and phone banking opportunities, including a canvas that Lisa's going to talk about this Saturday in Arlington, as well as other opportunities led by Virginians for Fair Elections and Rural Ground Game. And the good news is that you can also get out the vote right in your own neighborhood. There's no need to drive for hours to a swing district. And if you've never canvassed before, this is probably the easiest and gentlest way to try it out with people that you know in your community. And by the way, our partners in Virginia tell us that more than 1 in 5 of the voters they're talking with right now are undecided, and that the dialogues that all of you practice today, those kinds of conversations, are helping many of those folks move from I'm not sure to yes by the end of the conversation. So these really do make a huge difference. This election is going to be very, very close. And remember at the beginning of the workshop how I was talking about how Shelley Simons would have won her House of Delegates race back in 2017 if she had gotten one more vote. It could be that close for the special election. So every door you knock and every call you make could determine the difference between winning and losing. So thank you so much for engaging in this incredibly important work. Together, we have the power to protect and rebuild our democracy one conversation at a time. So now I'm going to turn the mic back to Lisa, who has some very important announcements before an optional question and answer session. Lisa?
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you for tonight. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and expertise. I think this was probably incredibly helpful for everybody who attended. And we really hope that all of you will put these skills to use. We are sharing links for canvassing and phone banking for redistricting in the chat. There's a special link for the canvas in Arlington for noon this Saturday, which is going to be kicked off by Eric Holder. That's in Virginia, Arlington, Virginia, this Saturday, starting at noon, and Eric Holder will be there. And we just want you to practice these skills. If you can't canvass this Saturday or you can't phone bank right away, we just want you to practice these skills wherever you can, whenever you can, because we just think that the more comfortable you become with them, the more you'll use them and put them to use. If you already have a political community, a grassroots group that you belong to, then we are grateful that you're active and we wish you all the best. If you do not belong to a community and you would like to join 31st Street, we would love to have you. And we're going to put a link in the chat for joining us if you would like. We have a very cohesive community. We're really active, not only in Virginia, but looking at key states around the country. We do a variety of things. We support a variety of actions and candidates, and we just keep each other sane. I think belonging to 31st Street or belonging to any grassroots group is really a way to not just survive these years, but to feel like you're empowered, which is so important right now for all of us, because without it, I think we just all would get incredibly depressed and stay in bed with the covers over our heads. But if you belong to a group, you have the power of the group and you can actually make change and see it. And that makes you feel really good. So feel free to join us. And thank you so much for joining this event tonight. And we're going to have some time for a Q&A. So if you're dropping off, good night and thanks again. If you want to stay and ask some questions, feel free to do that. And thanks again to Steve for putting this on and Elizabeth for joining us.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you all of you for being here. Let's see, we do have some time for Q&A. So if you have a question, if you could use the raise hand feature, we will let you unmute one at a time and we can go ahead and answer questions. So Jill, do you have a question?
Yes, I've been active postcards and talking to people, friends, and sending emails, but I've been deluged with these horrible postcards. It's not a postcard like the kind I wrote to get people to vote for Biden. It's postcards that are very glossy and they have misinformation and they take President Obama's quotes out of context. And I've gotten one positive from Governor Spanberger and 6 negative ones.
Mm.
And I don't know how to, it feels complicated to try to explain when people are seeing these alarming pictures.
Mhm.
So that's, I need a crutch.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for bringing that up. I actually might ask Fennell if she is still here, if she had some thoughts on this. But in the meantime, I will say, Fennell, if you're here, maybe you can raise your hand
I
if you
can
want
hear
to.
you.
Okay. Do you have some thoughts about how you were responding to that?
Yeah, I do. And I would say, Jim Shelton is probably the best at all of the social media that you guys do here at 31st Street. But I would say that what's really working is the phone banking. And that is why it's so important. And that's why it's so heartening for you to do the training to get folks really comfortable because they're getting a paper in the mail. But it's so much more powerful to get a voice on the phone to talk about this election and why it's so important. And I can't speak for the Fair Elections campaign, but what I would say is um, that they're doing what they think they should do, but what we think grassroots like these organizations like 31st Street is on the phones and at the doors. That's the most powerful thing you can do against those mailers.
Thank you. One thing I would say is, I don't know if anybody has a link to like what Obama really said rather than the out of context thing, but it could be interesting just to share that with folks. And also I would say what I would tell people, and I know there were some questions about like the comparison to Jim Crow, that this redistricting measure is taking power away from Black voters. What I would say is just, I would kind of shake my head sadly and say, unfortunately, you can't believe everything that you read, and this is to me an indication that the other side, like the no side, is so desperate that they're going to be spreading misinformation. They don't feel like they can win this fair and square, so they have to spread all this misinformation. But really, you should do your own research. I could share this link if you want to look at it, but this is like the original, what Obama said, and then trust that they will like look into that further. But I think it is very valuable. This is one of the strengths, I think, of having a real-time live conversation, either in person or over the phone, where people get to talk about these things out loud, and you can point out things that they might not have thought about, or you can maybe share some resources and then allow them to make their own decision about that.
And Elizabeth, just
Yes.
finally, what I would say is, as a Black woman and as the folks that I surround myself with, we find it very insulting, and people are very angered by it. And I was having and it is confusing. I was having a conversation with a 90-year-old Black woman, and she said, "All these commercials on TV, I find them, I find it very confusing." And so but she says, I know how I'm supposed to vote. I'm going to be voting yes. And that's because her daughter and friends and family and all the things that she's seeing from trusted resources tell her how she should be voting. So again, it just comes back to trusted resources and people that they know, but us also sharing our time on the phone and at the doors and our own personal social media.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I think all of those working together are super important, and we have to, in some ways, work twice as hard to counter the misinformation that's out there. But that is why it's even more important, I think, to be having these conversations. Meg.
Yes. Now, who will we be calling? Will it be just Democrats like we do when we're getting out the vote? Or are we trying to cover a much broader range of voters? And the same is true for going canvassing. I'm unclear about what kind of list you're given at the beginning.
I'm wondering, Fennell, do you have some info about that?
Yes, I do. I can answer on the canvassing. So on the canvas, I mean, not the canvassing, I'm sorry, on the phone bank side. So Virginia for Fair Elections has made it a one-stop shop, much like what California did. So all of the phone banking is going through Rural Ground Game. And so it's from 9 until 8 every day until the 21st. And it is Democratic voters that we are calling. Now, nothing's perfect. So every now and then you're going to get somebody who's not. But for the most part, I was making calls tonight. So for the most part, you are getting Democratic voters. Every now and then it might be somebody in there. But for the most part, you are calling known Democratic voters. And it's really a reminder for them to get out. And quite frankly, sometimes you'll be surprised that some people just have no idea and they're grateful for the phone call. And that's your opportunity to tell them why they're voting yes and why they should vote yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Fennell.
I just have to say, I had a knock on the door and that stayed with me for quite some time. I knocked on the door on a couple who were in their late 60s, maybe early 70s, and they were from Cuba. Both of them were children who came here. They didn't know each other until they got older. And they saw what was happening with Cuba, that the embargo on oil, and that people, who knows what's happening there right now. They're suffering. And this woman literally had tears in her eyes. And she said, what's to become of us? Mm-hmm. We're U.S. citizens, but they don't see us as U.S. citizens. And my family still in Cuba. Mm-hmm. And I just listened for a good 10 minutes. I didn't tell them you have to vote. I just listened and said, I understand what you're going through. And there are steps that we can take. Mm-hmm. And one of them is what we're doing in Virginia, is to hold him accountable. And she said, you know what? I've always voted as an independent. No more Republicans. My husband's always been a Democratic voter. And I'll follow him because what's going to happen to us? And I said, that's what we all say. We're all saying that in some respects. And yet, but with you, it's even more personal because you have people in Cuba, they're your relatives, your family, and you're feeling pretty helpless. One way to help them is to vote.
Wow.
And she thanked me for coming to her door and for listening.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow. I can't imagine a better way to wrap this up with, but, hot off the press, a story of how that person-to-person connection at the door really can transform how people think about not only politics, but just, I think we are reweaving these connections that right now there's so much that's pulling us apart, but I feel like these conversations can help knit back the fabric of our society, whether it's on the phone or in person. And it is so important, and these are people that I will probably never see again, but this one time that we connect, there's this saying in Japanese that translates roughly to one life, one meeting, and it's just this one time that our paths cross in this lifetime, but it can be transformative. And I think the fact that we can hold space for each other, we can listen, we can empathize, we can maybe just get a tiny glimpse of what someone else's life is like, and we can together find what unifies us, and how we're going to find our way out of this very difficult place that we are in this country. This is the power of these conversations, of talking with people, talking with strangers, talking politics with strangers. So I applaud all of you. Rose, thank you so much for that and for everything you're doing on the ground. Fennell and everybody on this call. I mean, you are my heroes. This is really, I think, no one is going to come save us. I think it's really up to all of us to go out and go outside of our comfort zones and connect with people. I think this is really how we're going to transform our country. So thank you all so much for being here.
Elizabeth, I love your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you.